Welcome to my video. I made a Pygame and you can make one too. You might be asking the question, what in the world is a Pygame? Well, according to Wikipedia, Pygame is a cross-platform set of Python modules designed for writing video games. It includes computer graphics and sound libraries designed to be used with the Python programming language. So yeah, this is more of a modern take on computer programming, making games rather than 6502, but there was a reason for doing it this way. And I've been following OldSkoolcoder over on his Twitch channel and his YouTube, and his idea for this whole thing was to basically do rapid application development, to create a game quickly the way you would want to make it, and then port it to 6502 once you've kind of figured out all the nitty-gritty details of it. So that was kind of the idea behind getting into Pygame. I'm also very interested in learning Python, and I thought this was a neat little project to get into. So I wanted to show you how simple it can be to get into Pygame and to start making your own games. You do have to have an affinity for programming, and you would have to have a bit of a willingness to learn, of course, a new language. And OldSkoolcoder has done a series of videos on his channel, and he has a playlist called Python where he does cover a bunch of videos, a bunch of different concepts of making a game. And one of those videos that I'm covering today, I'm going to go in a little more detail, is to making a game template, designing or developing a game template. So we're going to take a look at that, and we'll download that and we'll see how easy it is to incorporate that and to get started making a game. For those that are interested in learning more about Python than OldSkoolcoder can give on these short little videos, there is a video that he shared on his Discord channel, which is very in-depth. It's a complete course on Python for the absolute beginner. So the only downside to this video is that it's 13.5 hours long. So it is a major commitment, but it's very, very, very good. I have a confession. I've only listened or watched the first hour of it, but man, so far. But I do plan to go back and finish it. It's very, very good. So the first thing we're going to do is head over to OldSkoolcoder's GitHub, and I have the link in the description for the PyTemplate, and we're going to download that. You just click where it says code right here and just download that. Download it as a zip. Now, I've already done that, and I have it here on my desktop. So I'm going to copy his code into my Python folder. And we'll take a look at what that does. Let's take a look at what that program is doing. Now, to get started here, I'm using VS Code and I'm using two plugins. Now, VS Code is a Microsoft product you can download for free, and the plugins you can also download for free. I'm using the Python plugin right here and this PyLance, which it's kind of like kind of points out issues and helps you develop your code. So we're going to go to here to open folder, and we're going to open up the template folder, and you'll see there's only 3 programs. He has game.py, main.py, and settings.py. And what he's done with settings is basically your constants. In Python, essentially anything with all uppercase variables is considered a constant. And in Python, when you represent colors, it's a tuple, or a group of 3 bytes. So you have your RGB. And so you just change these colors in order to change the color. So white is all the colors, 255 across. Black is the absence of all colors, so 000, and so on, red, green, blue. So that's just to show you how Python does its colors, and then when you set a color, you just use this constant. rather than the 3 bytes right there. And we have a default screen width and height. And then the whole idea with what OldSkoolcoder was trying to do, he has here the FPS, like your frames per second, was trying to model a Commodore 64, how many frames per second you have in a PAL Commodore 64. And so that's what he's done here with the FPS. And then in main, what we have here is we have a little loop running, and right before the loop we have a class object, and that's more of an advanced concept, the concept of classes and what they do. And even I need to learn more about this. And I'm not claiming to be an expert on all of this, but I'm just kind of going over what I've learned so far. And so we have, you initiate a new game. You set the variable, here he's setting the variable G to the game class. Then he's calling the game's method to start the title screen. You do the show start screen. And then while the variable g.running, while the game is running, do this loop right here. Create a new game. And then when the game is over, do the game over screen. Show the game over screen. And this will loop while that variable is true. So you have to, at some point, set that variable to false for the game to end. And then it just quits out of the program. So the heart of this program is, obviously, is this class called game. And in the class, you have a few definitions or functions in Python. The first one is to initialize itself. And all this is doing is setting the screen width and screen height of the window that's going to open. And he sets the caption here, the title of the game, or whichever game whatever you want to call it in your title. And he sets the clock, sets running to true. And then the next function is called new. So when you create a new game, all it's doing so far, right now, he has a sprite group. So in Pygame, you can create sprites and you can have groups of sprites. And for the template, what he's doing is setting a variable called all sprites. So all the sprites in the game would be added to this group. And you can flesh it out. He has it comments here to flesh it out, to add player sprites, add enemy sprites, and any other sprites. And then you call run. And run is right here. Run is another loop while playing. He sets the variable playing to be true. And this does a loop. Sets the clock to 60 frames per second. Run events, update, and draw. And those are right here. So you have update calls the function of the sprite group to update the sprites. Events right here is a loop that kind of checks the keyboard. Basically it says events handler, but it's kind of checking to see if the game has been quit yet. Draw actually draws the screen. So here we're going to fill our window to make it black using the variable black that's in settings. All sprites will draw all the sprites on the screen, and you don't actually see anything happen until you do this command here. And this is a Pygame thing where you flip the screen. And once the screen is flipped, all the motion happens, or all the movement, all the changes that you did on the draw and fill and all that stuff. And if you have text, that will display when you do the flip. And then right now we haven't fleshed out show start screen, and we haven't fleshed out show game over screen. Those are kind of things you do a little later after you've gotten further with the game. Now, in order to run this, what you do is you go over here to the to the main.py, and then you go up to run, and you do run without debugging. And what that will do is we'll open the window, and this is fresh off of his template website, off of his GitHub. And you see it, there's not much to look at when it runs, but you do see that you have a title here. We could change that. But I didn't want to leave it there with this. What I wanted to do was at least have something on the screen as a part of the template. So let's take a look at that. I have this player.py. And I'm going to import that in. So I at least want to have a player. And here's player. So player is another class. You're essentially building your player sprite. And in the init function, what we're doing, we're going to create a little box with the width and height. The width being 15 and the height being 15. You can adjust the size to be whatever you want. We're going to fill that box to be yellow. And then we're going to set the position of the rectangle, the X and the Y position of the rectangle, to be basically the center of the screen. So you take the screen width divided by 2 and the screen height divided by 2. And the 2 forward slashes for divide signifies integer divide. So you don't get a remainder. It's not a floating point divide. Then in the update function, all we're doing is we're checking the keyboard and checking which key was pressed. We're going to use the arrow keys up, down, left, and right. If left arrow was pressed, we're going to subtract 10 from the X position of the rectangle. So we do basically X equals X minus 10. If it's right, X equals X plus 10, and so on. If for the Y position, rect.Y is equal to rect.Y minus 10 and plus 10. So what we have to do in order to add this to the program, we have to go back into game. And the first thing we have to do is import it. Because up at the top, you can import different things. And so we're going to import player. And then when the new function is called, we're going to add the player to the player portion. We're going to add in a sprite. So we're going to create a self.player. Basically, we're going to create a new variable that points to the player class. And then we're going to add it to the player sprites. So we're going to do self.allSprites.add self.player. So now it's been added to the all sprites group, which is this group that was defined right here. And I believe that's it. So let's see what that does. And when you run the program, you always have to be on main. You have to start it. You have to initiate it from main.py. So we're going to click run without debugging. And we got an error, add sprites. Oh. You probably spotted this before me. What I wanted to do is use this variable. In Python, it's not only do you have to get the variable names correct, you have to pay attention to the case. So I have add here. It should have said all, and the S has to be capitalized. So pay attention to that if you ever decide to try to get into Python. Now let's run it again. Okay, so now you'll see we have a little box. We can move it up, down, left, and right. And right now with this template, the way it is, you can go off the screen. It doesn't, there's no boundaries, and there's nothing else to the game. So there is no game at this point, but this will get you started at least. And if you want to add things, into it, you could add if statements. If the X position here is greater than something, then either don't add 10 anymore, or don't subtract 10, or whatever, so you can kind of tweak it from here. So what I was going to do was I will save off this version of the template and I'll put it on my Gray Defender GitHub so that you can go in and just use this template. And if you want to, you can just use the one that OldSkoolcoder created that creates a blank window with nothing on it. But I prefer to have something visual to start with for a template. And so that's why I did that. Modified this and did the little player sprite just to show you how to do it. This is how I got started with Pygame. OldSkoolcoder was very gracious to help me with my Covid-O-Tron video game, or a game that I did in Pygame. And he got me going because when I first started, all I could do was that up, down, left, and right. And there is more to it than what I can cover in this video, but I do appreciate you taking the time to watch. And now I'm going to show you some footage from my Pygame, Covid-O-Tron. Alright, this is my Pygame. I called it Covid-O-Tron. And you can see the blue enemies are worth 10 points, the orange are 100, red 200, and purple are 300. You control the game by using the arrow keys, up, down, left, and right. And at the beginning, you use the space bar to fire. And you also use the space bar to initiate the game. So right here, I'm playing, there's only 3 enemies on level 1. You have the score at the bottom, you have your transition, you have the round, and the number of lives. And as the game progresses, at least for the first 12 levels, there are ramp ups. The enemies get a little bit faster, there's more of them, and the colored enemies, or the ones that are not blue, have a little bit of intelligence built into them. They will actually migrate toward you, and that becomes makes the game even more difficult as the levels progress. I also built into the game a power-up system, so there's a total of 3 power-ups. The first one is already enabled, allows auto fire, and so that's what's happening now, is the game is in auto fire mode. I know this isn't like the typical Robotron where you fire in all directions, but this is my first Pygame, so I was proud of how it turned out. And the power-ups show up here on level 3, 5, and 7. So on 5, we got where you have two-way fire, so you can fire in 2 directions simultaneously. And then you can also move diagonally in the game and fire in those 2 directions diagonally. Well, it appears like you're firing diagonally, but you're actually not. And when we hit level 7, the power-up switches to 4-way, so that lasts till the end of the game. Now, if you're skilled enough or lucky enough to make it to past level 12, I actually ramp up the fire, the speed of the bullets that fire. And you see here the 4-way fire has been enabled. And as I am moving around frantically, even with 4-way fire and rapid fire, it is sometimes difficult to hit those single enemies at the time. And they seem to hang out at the corners or at the bottom or the edges of the screen. So as I was saying, on level 13, though, I ramp up how fast you fire. And you got to have a few spare lives to make it past 12. 12 and 13, anything past 12, you need to have some lives in the bank. I do award free ships or free man, or if you will, every 5,000 points. And then on the bottom right where on the bottom where it says round number, it will sometimes, when you die, it'll show the number of enemies left over. So how I designed the game, if there's 50 enemies that are going to spawn, and you kill 25 of them after they've all spawned, then it will only spawn the remaining 25 after you die. That way it makes it a little more easy to progress past the levels. And so I put the enemies remaining down at the bottom next to the round. Sometimes when you die, you can read that and you can kind of tell how many enemies are left to deal with. And here you see on level 11, the ramp up has gotten pretty fast. I tend to go up into the corners areas and try to hide out there, but it doesn't always work. The enemies are fast and furious at this point. And then see here on level 12, this is where the enemies are their fastest, and it gets really frantic. And I'm doing anything I can. Now, I did make it so the enemies don't spawn directly on top of you. And they don't spawn or run into each other either. But they can spawn next to you and run right into you right afterwards. So that makes it really difficult sometimes. And you see, I had like 5 or 6 lives entering at this point. And this gameplay here, I only make it to level 13. I do make it past this 12 here, so bear with me. Yeah, you see how fast the blue ones are dangerous. The blue ones are usually not dangerous, but when the game speed gets this quick, they become dangerous. And then you'll see as we hit level 13, you fire a lot faster, which helps out tremendously. And I think you could probably make it up. If you have enough lives in the bank, I think you could probably make it to 15 or more. You see how I'm just staying in the corner? It was working for a little while, but... and then there's a little bug where it says the lives remaining because it doesn't clear out in between rounds, and so that it steps on each other. The previous message prints on top of the new message, and I didn't have time, or I didn't take the time, let's put it that way, to fix that one. Oh, okay, I made it to level 14 on this one. For a few seconds. Anyway, that's my game, Covid-O-Tron. You can go download it on my GitHub, and thanks for watching.